I know you do a lot of different things, improv, stand-up, writing, performing.
Yeah, I'm an improviser, an actor, screenwriter, director, um, solo sketch artist as well. And really, if it's performance-based and someone wants to collaborate on it, I'm usually down. I love working on anything expressive on stage or in front of the camera, or behind the camera.
What do you like most about performing?
There's so much that I like about performing. I love finding pieces of myself in characters that seem dissimilar to me. I love being able to express an emotional state that I don't often get to in the real world, whether that be in a work setting or if I'm just trying to follow social decorum. So getting the opportunity to be on stage and let those more primal feelings unleash is usually kind of fun.
How did you first get into doing things like improv, and has improv affected your life in other ways outside of performing?
Do you mind if there's no time limit on this? Because I could talk about this for a minute.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I've wanted to be an actor since I was a child and started acting in the 4th grade. And when I moved to Atlanta, I was in 8th grade and knew I wanted to get into improv. I loved Whose Line Is It Anyway, as so many people do. And there was this Christian youth theater that did short form improv. And I found my footing in improv then in 9th grade and improvised with that organization until I started an improv team in high school. Controlled Chaos was our name. And then moved to UGA and joined Improv Athens, which was such a dream. Soon after college, moved to New York, studied at Upright Citizens Brigade, and did that for a few sessions until I had a panic attack and moved back to Atlanta and joined Highwire Comedy, rest in peace, great improv comedy theater back in the day. And when that faltered, I joined Village Theater, which I'm still a cast member of. Now that we're still trying to get our footing across, I've definitely focused more on independent teams and joining into different shows that'll have guest improvisers pop in. But improv has been such a thread throughout my life. And, you know, as with so many performers, at times it's therapeutic. At times it's the only way that I've found that I could express myself creatively. And one thing that I didn't realize was so important to me about improv that kind of came to me more recently, maybe within the last 5 or 6 years, I've found such a sense of community with comedy at large and especially with improv. Getting to find trust and chemistry with folks that you can translate on stage is genuine magic, and I love being a part of that glimmering experience. So.
Excellent. As far as writing goes, do you do primarily just screenwriting?
So I've written a couple of short films and a couple of short stories as well. I've done some solo sketch writing, but primarily screenwriting, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I work a lot in kind of the realm of switching your skill from like one platform or one medium into another. So what have you enjoyed about writing short films, writing improv, or developing the concept, whatever you're doing with improv, and then writing material for stand-up? Like what have you enjoyed about those pivots that you've had to make in writing?
Yeah, well, I lean and have leaned on improv for so long because once I am familiar with the tools and the format that we're playing in, we just go. And there's no prep work you have to do, so you don't really have to be too disciplined to improvise. I started doing my short film screenwriting, because I wanted to have a body of work that I could point to, and honestly used improv as the limitations for writing my first short film. There's an improv format called the La Ronde, and I basically wrote a 13-page script that is a La Ronde, and found myself getting in a flow state very much like I do on stage when I'm playing with people that I have good chemistry with. And it was pretty magical when I set that boundary for myself writing. It was like, oh, now I can play with myself, play with these ideas, kind of surprise myself with what happens on the page, surprise myself with the voices of the characters. for the longest time when I would sit down and write, it felt like I had to get to that end state first. But for whatever reason, approaching that short film as an improv show really unleashed something. Yeah, and the second short film that I've written and haven't shot yet, very similarly, I just allowed myself to get into that flow state. I didn't actually use an improv format with that one, but got in a similar headspace where once I started writing, I just allowed myself to be curious about where things were going to go and treated it almost like an improv set. I've done a little bit of solo sketch. Honestly, I kind of just approached that by just doing a stream of consciousness, just trying to find what entertained me by writing these characters that I'd come up with. And my wife could tell you, I wasn't sure if it was funny or not. It was funny to me, but when you're improvising, you have that immediate feedback. And when you're working with a script and other people, you can kind of get a sense in the room what's working dialogue-wise and what's not. But running solo sketch at home alone or for my wife, it's hard to be like, okay, well, is this working, is it not? Thankfully, she was super supportive and is super supportive, and she made me feel confident. So the first time I performed my solo sketch, I honestly felt really on fire about it. Not just for how it was received, but for my enjoyment of the piece. So,
expanding upon what you were saying, do you have any way of trying to test out jokes or anything of that sort before you go on stage? Do you have any process for that?
So I've not done too much solo sketch or stand-up. Really, it's running it by my wife, to be honest. Occasionally, I have a couple of close friends that I would send jokes to maybe that I want to like work on if I'm doing something for TikTok or Instagram, which I don't do very much of. But yeah, I think that's one reason why I love improv is because the only way to find out if it's funny is to just go with the idea. And to sit down and write something, I start second guessing myself pretty quickly. Or I have noticed that being a pattern in the past.
Excellent. I've got a big one for you.
Please.
What is comedy?
Question as old as time. That is a great question. I honestly think the comedy that comes from me is often a bit of the truth. Everything that's actually funny is based in reality to a certain extent because it's either relatable or it surprises us because it isn't meeting our expectations but is still somehow real. I think that a lot of things that are funny in a different perspective, someone might take it very sincerely. In terms of the comedy I like, I love big characters. I love wittiness. I always am really happy with myself when I say something clever because I think my go-to as a performer is big character work and taking up the stage. And I love clever formats too. I love stories that unfold in ways that require the audience to pay attention. I love being lost in an experience, whether that's watching other improvisers or a comic's brilliant set or a movie that just has me locked in. Yeah. But I think I would change my definition of comedy probably throughout my life. That's just kind of what's coming to me right now.
What is the biggest creative risk you've ever taken and how did it pay off?
The biggest creative risk I've ever taken. Well, I mean, I'm going to mention a couple because I don't know that any have been necessarily like super large, but shooting, editing, and screening my first short film, Golden Hour, required a lot of me. I had never been so disciplined writing a piece, gathering a group of people together, shooting it and keeping a schedule with editing, and then booking a place to screen it that we packed out. That was definitely my first big challenge of sharing a piece of work that I really believed in and had a vision for. And the payoff was that I saw that I could do what I see in myself as a dream. I could bring that to reality. Recently, I did the VSP showcase, and that was maybe not super risky, but that was a challenge that I had to hype myself up for. because I don't do a lot of solo sketch, but it's something that I absolutely enjoy, and I really had fun writing these 3 characters that I was already familiar with and creating some pieces around those. And that was more of a challenge with a hopeful goal of finding representation, but throughout the process of doing it, I realized what was really gratifying for me was seeing people's response to it. And now I'm just sitting here wanting to perform that piece again, that 5 minutes. There have been other risks, other 2 that come to mind right now, though.
Excellent. How has your production work, and when I say production, I mean anything that's not performing.
Sure.
So writing, producing, if you get into directing, technical work, how has any of your production work helped you be a better performer?
I think first and foremost, when you produce your own work, whether that's something as quote unquote quick as producing an improv show, which there's a lot of work that goes into producing an improv show, versus producing or directing a short or any sort of filmed production, once you do that work, you have a lot more respect for the people that are putting on the work to make it a reality for you. Every time I've produced an improv show, even though I've done it so many times now, it's so stressful. Making sure that people know the call time and that you have someone to do lights and sound and that you boost the marketing out the weeks leading up and that you make sure people are comfortable with the set list. And there's so much work that if you're just performing, you don't really know the true amount of work that goes into it and the amount of mental effort. So I think just having that amount of respect is helpful as a performer. When you produce and direct something, whether that's on stage or on film, it gives you this other vision for what the work is too. And I think a lot of performers I work with have a bigger vision than what their character is doing or what they're trying to bring to the stage or the camera. All the same, when you direct or when you produce and you think about the project more holistically, it definitely informs how you operate when you're performing. Kind of gives a broader sense for how your place as a performer impacts the story at large, or the way that the character presents themselves, or the impact that they'll have to the story outside of their dialogue and relationships.
Excellent. When you're putting together an improv show, do you prefer to keep it sort of free form, or do you kind of like to have like a theme or like a kind of a cohesive through line throughout the show?
It depends. It depends. I used to have this show, it's my darling show, Head Lettuce. And that was a show that was very free, but had a very strict through line. It involved 2 characters, Chad and Braxton. I played Chad, my good friend Ben played Braxton, and we would show up to the venue in character and remain in character until either everybody left or we went away and changed. And so there was this constant theme of like, the show's already happening. You're in the show. Most of the time we would have an opener for those sets, not always, but we wouldn't worry about there being any sort of theme or consistent style of play between the openers or us, but the theme really was just woven in the entire evening. But the most recent show I produced, A Dynamic El Dorado, there was like a loose marketing theme, but really the goal that I had for that show was to book my favorite improv groups. A night of duos, and there was a strict structure that I had for the show, but improv is improv, and you kind of have to go with the flow on stage as much as you do off stage, and that was a night that we did go with the flow, and it really was a magical evening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. On that note, what is the importance of the indie comedy scene in Atlanta?
For as long as I've been back in Atlanta, since 2012, it's always had a really vibrant alternative comedy scene. And I know it existed before then as well. Improv has been here for so many years, and there's some established theaters. And thank goodness we have those places as these flagships for people out of town to come to, whether that be attendees or performers. There's so much talent in the city at the same time, and that talent does not have the accessibility to get to all of these places to play. And having independent spaces where we can collaborate and put on shows keeps the community alive. Theaters can only be successful when they find the people to play there, but oftentimes people don't get the opportunity to play there unless there's a lot of money that's invested or a lot of time that's invested. And having spaces like Dynamic Eldorado is so helpful and encouraging because it brings this space to people that might not otherwise have an easy way to connect with the community.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. What is the next skill that you want to learn? That could be something performing, that could be post-production, that could be dancing, that could be anything.
Sure.
Like what's the next thing you want to learn to kind of level yourself up?
Can I say a few things, or does it have to
Absolutely.
be one?
Nope, absolutely.
Okay, because the first thing that came to mind is not comedy performance related, but I've been playing the guitar intentionally with the intention to get better for the last 2 years, and I'm certainly going to continue doing that. I have a goal to learn Dutch very soon, so that's going to be something that I think will be maybe not the most useful language to learn in the entire world, but a fun one to learn. As far as performing, I want to continue developing solo sketch. I have a big goal to do some open mics, start doing some stand-up, figuring out how to weave what I've learned through doing some solo sketch into doing stand-up. I guess those are the 3 skills that I would talk on right now. I would love to learn throughout my entire life, so it's going to be something that I explore from now until the day I die, learning new skills.
Do you approach projects differently if you're the one who like wrote it or produced it versus if somebody else asks you, hey, do you want to be in my thing?
I really like this question because I've had the opportunity to be involved in other people's projects recently, and I think I always want to approach projects with the intention to bring my best, because I want to look good for people. Whether that's work I'm doing for myself or work for other people, I want people to be like, oh, dang, he really brought his A game. When it comes to working on other people's projects, I had the honor of being in Brett Schultz's most recent short film, Lamb of God. It was so clear that he had a very strong vision for this piece, and the character he wrote that I played, it meant a lot to me to play that role. And throughout the process, pre-production and production, I just wanted to honor him as much as possible, because if someone has such a clear vision, to be able to be a part of executing and bringing that vision to reality, there's no greater honor in the world, in my mind. Tonight, I just came from a table reading, wonderful script for Office of President's Life by Peyton. And I had a very small role in this script for this particular episode. And all the same, I was like, okay, I have these 4 lines and I want to absolutely knock each of them out of the park. Because same thing, it's 1, a great script, but 2, what a joy to be asked to bring someone's project to the world. And I want to make every opportunity that I am offered one that's worthwhile. So,
Excellent.
And that didn't totally answer the question, because I feel similarly with my own work. I guess it's just a different approach though, because with my own work, I want to honor my own vision, of course, but there's that other side of it that's like, oh, I have so much more responsibility to share what this vision is and make sure that people understand what it is I want to bring to the world. So it's kind of the same, but more nuanced, I think, when it's my own work.